Good evening. Welcome to the United Way, the Talking Devils Tactics podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined by Tony Bryson and Mike Pieri to talk over, to preview Manchester United against Manchester City at the Etihad in the Manchester Derby, the first big game of the season, if we discount the first game of the season and all the other games that we've played in and not won. So this is the first big one. I'm joined by Tony and Mike, as I said. How are you doing, Tony? You all right?
I'm all good, mate. Looking forward to the international stuff stopping, although Scotland have done pretty well in the two games, considering where I thought they would be. So it's been a decent international break, but looking forward to the football coming back this weekend.
Yeah. Mike, how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just trying to forget my last match that I attended.
Right. Which was that?
Grimsby.
You had to say it, man. Why did you say it?
It slipped my mind that he was there. Forgot about
Yeah.
that. Oh, yeah. Well,
The fish and chips were nice.
Were they? So you got some good fish and chips then?
Yeah, got some good fish and chips.
There you go. A few other people wishing that they would have missed that. What a way for Andre Onana's United career to end. You know, if that's the way that it goes, that's a pretty undignified way. I did see the stat that came up this morning. They said 24 clean sheets, which averages at 2 goals conceded every game that he's played, just about, which is horrific when you think about it. And considering that a few of those would have been 1 goals, that's a lot of big splankings we've had in the time that Andre Onana's played. Thankfully, we're not going to talk about Grimsby. We're not even, what we really wanted to do on this podcast was like, you know what, start the season well, talk about the tactical innovations that are going really well for Ruben Amorim. But us being us, we thought it's international break. We've got to move over to this game. And because of that, because it's City, we're not even going to spend any time talking about the win over Burnley, which is feels a bit disrespectful to our great tactical success against Burnley, which, masterstrokes upon masterstrokes. Thankfully, we're not talking about it because, we were saved by a last-minute penalty. And there's enough misery to go around, there has been this season. So try and be optimistic for this one. If you're watching, if you're listening, if you could get in your comments, so feedback on the audio as well is always great. But if you're watching live, feel free to get your comments in and we'll get to as many as we can. Right, so we'll get talking. Ruben Amorim won in this game last season. In fact, he had a really good record in the away big games, generally anyway. Draw at Anfield, draw at Arsenal in the Cup, which we went on to win on penalties. Obviously, lost in the first few games against Arsenal with the set-piece routine. What is new there? Nothing. But we won at the Emirates. The Etihad. All these corporate sponsors from the East all meld into one, don't they? And in the end, the Etihad. Definitely not going to mistake City sponsors, are we? The news that they're preparing to robustly get more sponsors in the wake of the fair trade deal or something like that. All the Newcastle fans getting a little bit excited because City can demand a high sponsorship fee from themselves. But yeah, the Etihad anyway. I'm rambling on. Ruben Amorim had a really good record against the big teams away from home this last season. And a good record in big games overall. So it has been poor at the start of the season, although we all said we saw signs of progress in the game against Arsenal. The point is that we saw that run of games and we thought, obviously the harder games are going to be these games coming up. They were quite favourable, Burnley, Fulham and Grimsby, like Mike forecast. He's got to get 3 wins out of those bad boys. And comfortable wins, and it went very well. One comfortable draw and one uncomfortable win out of that. But yeah, so in the bigger games, he's generally done quite well. And this is really the test because people who were forecasting that his job might be on the line by November were looking at this run of fixtures coming up. And really, as Tony was saying in the group chat earlier today, it is with these games in mind that you really think about the impacts of the front players that United have signed this summer and the impact that they're likely to have in these kind of games. However, most of the talk, guys, is going to be on the fact that we've both changed goalkeepers in the time between the last game and this game. City, I can't see why they wouldn't play Donnarumma from the start. Donnarumma was linked with United earlier in the summer. Rumours were that United didn't go for him for two reasons. The first being the wages were prohibitive, even though he was offered to United first, a clear run at him. United said no because of the wages, but also apparently because they didn't like the way that he played. Now, if you've seen Senna Lomans play or anything of him, he's definitely more in line with David De Gea in terms of the way that he plays. He's not going to be an Edison. He's not going to be an Andre Onana. He's not going to be a goalkeeper, one of these modern goalkeepers who's asked to play out from the back. Or you wouldn't have thought he's going to be asked to do that. If he does, we could be in a lot of trouble. But it does suggest that two goalkeepers have been signed who are quite a tactical diversion from both managers, really, in terms of the way they've played so far. Having said this about Ruben Amorim, we're not quite sure about what he wants his goalkeeper to do, considering he inherited two of the most erratic goalkeepers in the Premier League. So we'll see how it develops from this position. Tony, I'm going to say it's a really big call for a game of this magnitude this early in the season for both teams to go in changing the goalkeepers. I think for that reason, I don't know why. I would think that, all right, you've signed a new goalkeeper. The goalkeepers have made errors in every single game that we've played. Throw in Lomans, he can't do any worse. But I just can't see it happening. I can't see that he's going to take Bayendier out. I'm sure he'll start him. I think City will start Donnarumma. But I do think the selection is likely to have a big impact on the game. Not so much tactically, but more narratively. Can you remember the game a couple of years back when was it Raya for Arsenal? And Neville was on Sky commentary and he was like, he's nervous, everything he's doing, he's nervous. And he settled down. He's obviously been a great goalkeeper for Arsenal. But the way that he was talking it up, this is what I'm talking about, the narrative, is that it gets driven by the media. Just like, this past week, you've had Sky saying, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Lomans, like they're not the ones applying it. What do you reckon you're going to see? First of all, do you think that will change goalkeeper? Do you think both teams will start with a new goalkeeper? Secondly, how do you think it'll affect the flow of the game?
I think City will start with a new goalkeeper. I think that's pretty much a given, not a shea given. But I can't see us flinging a guy who's never, I think he's only played 40 games in his career or something like that. Forgive me if that's the wrong number, but it's not a big number to chuck him into this game in that stadium where an error will be greeted with glee by the thousands sat behind him in light blue. So I would be very, very surprised if he gets thrown in straight away to this game. Yeah. I think Amorim has been fairly defensive of Bayendier in interviews after perceived errors and things. But I just can't see it. But I will probably diverge a wee bit from what you're saying there, Wayne. There's no way this manager's going to go away from a goalkeeper that is able to pass out from the back, because he's so tied to these principles.
Yeah.
If you talk about if you mention the Grimsby game, sorry, Mike, PTSD for you, mate. But one of the things he said he was so angry about that he's sitting in the dugout, not watching the penalties, is because he's thinking about the lack of control we had of the ball in the first period when you want to make Grimsby chase you and you want to open up the spaces. And one of the things he said specifically was, we didn't use the goalkeeper to control the ball. So enough. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about this manager in terms of where he sees it. And that's something that's kind of come out in modern football recently, is that the out ball that pretty much always exists is the one back to the goalkeeper to retain possession. You use them as a pivot, or an opportunity to switch the play. You use them as somebody to turn out if you're under pressure, to just give the ball back to. So I would say Senna Lomans has been signed specifically to build into that mould. I just think perhaps Grimsby or Burnley at Old Trafford would have been a better game for him to have his first game and I don't think we'll see him at the weekend.
Yeah, and even if he'd started, even if we'd signed him earlier and done that, I just don't, you know what I mean, putting it before this run of games that we've got coming up, it's such a big one to. But then again, I look at this, Mike, and I think it's such a double-edged sword. You know, he's going to live and die by these decisions. You know, if he starts with Bayendier in this run of games and he makes a run of error, you know, like I always go back, not that I was alive for it, but the run of fixtures where we played in the 70s where Paddy Roach came in for Alex Stepney, and it was such a critical run of games. We lost against Arsenal, I think Liverpool, City. It was a big run of games which he dropped Stepney for and called Roach up, and he made loads of errors, called Stepney back up, but that run of games effectively cost us a chance of going for the league title. This time round, I think it's much more severe in terms of the manager's job. The one thing I will say is that from the Burnley game and from the transfer speculation since, it's definitely a case that, because he was dodging the question earlier in the season, it's definitely a case that Onana's been dropped. So there's no hiding from that. So he's definitely the one who's out of favour. I can't see him, like Tony said, I can't see him not playing Bayendier because of that. I think he's still going to give him, say it's his shirt to lose, and give him enough chance to do that. My only issue with that is that if he loses his shirt, as we all expect that he will, because he's not good enough, how much time, you know what I mean? There's two running roads there. It's like the manager losing his job and the goalkeeper losing his shirt. And it's a big risk to take, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think there's several things to this. How brave do we think Amorim is as a manager? And were this 6 months ago, would he have just said, well, I'm playing the player that I've just bought rather than the player I inherited? It just depends what he's thinking stylistically, tactically, and for the long run. I'd like to think that he's a brave manager and he does play the new lad. And that way he's setting his stall out. This is my way. You're my goalkeeper. Give him that confidence and give him that run of games. I think there's some fear at the minute. There's some fear based on how we started, how we've played. And I think he will play Bayendier. But I think the thing with Bayendier as well, and let's not forget the Arsenal game, Bayendier's passing was excellent.
Yeah.
You know, it was excellent. So if we are not going to retain as much possession, if we are going to sit further back, if we are going to use our goalkeeper as that out ball, as Tony, you correctly said, then moving forward, if he's going to be that first pass out, he proved against Arsenal, he can drop it in behind their press and in behind their midfield. So I think there's two ways of looking at it. It's whether he trusts that Bayendier from Arsenal, the passing Bayendier, which may help in terms of when you've got the ball, or does he want Layman's in to forego the handling mistakes that we know Bayendier has got? And I think it would tell us a lot about Amorim as a manager who he picks on at the weekend.
Yeah, definitely. Tony, you're going to come in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. If I'm setting up, like, Man City are going to have a lot of the ball in our half, as they always do against everybody, all the time at home, you would imagine. If I was involved in Man City, I would be picking up. Obviously, you'd be picking up again on Bayendier and his errors. I don't think they're necessarily handling errors, Mike. I think they're probably more so errors under pressure. So if you can pack the box and cross it on top of Bayendier, him coming to try and collect the ball under pressure is where you get his errors from, and that's what we've seen.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Aye, so that's how I would be setting up if I was Man City. I would be a lot of crosses, a lot of bodies, a lot of runs beyond, and seeing if I can get that goalkeeper to come off his line, because it's there that he makes his errors. I just don't think you put a young. Can you imagine? As you alluded to it earlier, Wayne, about Gary Neville and etc. And I'd kind of switch off when any of the class of '92 are talking about Man United, because nothing's as good as it was when they were there ever anymore. And they're probably right, but I'm sick of hearing about it. So can you imagine the overdrive if he goes into his first game, the young boy, and makes an error and it costs us a goal and we lose 1-0 or we lose 2-1? Yeah. It's just too big a risk. You could lose the kid immediately.
No, yeah, that's where I'm coming from with that. And so it's not just that, is it? There's Liverpool coming up, there's Chelsea coming in. I know you can't keep him out indefinitely, considering we've spent a lot of money on him, and there's only one game a week, so he's going to play at some point, and he will play in big games. It's just about when that penny drops and when he decides to go for it. I just like we've all said, I don't think Sunday's the one. I think that's going to be Bayendia. Talking about the what it tells us about the manager, I think City's choice tells us a lot about Guardiola these days. I mean, I always felt that the signing of Haaland was a massive diversion because he never had a striker like that in his team, and he was pretty much at that point. I don't think it was about holistic football anymore. It was about he needed to get that European Cup. Because he was getting so much criticism for not criticism, relative criticism. Guardiola's already rated by a large percentage as the greatest manager of all time. I strongly disagree with that, but that's an opinion held by many. But they wanted an extra European Cup to vindicate that. So there's no doubt that Guardiola, having been criticised in one European Cup final for trying to be too clever with the tactics, then went the other way and just went flat track bully and signed Haaland. I think this time round he signed who he thinks is the best goalkeeper on the market. He might be wrong, he might be right. I think when I've looked at Donnarumma, I think there are elements about his game. Sometimes he does let in a few soft goals. I don't, sometimes you look at a goalkeeper, he's very tall, he's 6'4", is he 6'5", 6'6", and I don't know if that size is helpful for his frame. Some goalkeepers are natural in that frame. Van der Sar was almost that size. Schmeichel that size. Some goalkeepers are really, really comfortable in their size. Donnarumma looks a little bit awkward to be that tall. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's just when I look at him, I think he doesn't get down quick enough. I think the goals that he concedes are like that. And he struck me as not a Guardiola kind of signing. Do you know what I mean? Trafford, yeah, I could see that. I can see why. I could have even seen if he'd have gone for Martinez or Villa. Do you know what I mean? I could see those kind of things. I just couldn't see this one. I mean, if you're looking holistically and saying, well, this is where the City used to playing under Guardiola, I just think he's taken a complete diversion from that. I don't think the art of football is there for him anymore. It's more about trophy collecting. And that way of doing it is by just stockpiling the best players. It's all become a little bit boring and sterile at City anyway, hasn't it? But they will still adhere to some of the same principles, which is controlling the game in midfield. Mike, you said this earlier. Tony said this earlier, actually, about City dominating the ball. Actually, at City last season, it was pretty much 50-50, wasn't it? I think it was a tad under. I think we had 49 something, which is the most possession we've had at City since well before Fergie retired, because we weren't keeping the ball then either. I don't expect that. Funnily enough, we were talking about the home game where we had Ugarte and Casemiro starting. That's not a midfielder who's going to keep hold of the ball. You've got a sneaking suspicion that that's the midfielder that's going to start on Sunday, Tony. It's a big call what's going to happen in there. Kind of dictated by the injury to Cunha, and we're not expecting him to play. So based on that, what midfield are you expecting to see? And how do you think that that's going to impact the way that United are going to set up?
I reckon because of where we're going to play and who we're going to play against, that you'll see obviously the same shape that everybody talks about, the 3-4-3. But I think it will be Ugarte and Casemiro, because I think he will put Bruno into that front three off one of the sides, with Šeško through the middle and Mbeumo on the other side, wherever it is. And I think it will be Ugarte Casemiro, which is ironically the same midfield two that played at Old Trafford, as you said at the start. So I just checked that there. We were 48.2% at the Etihad last year, possession-wise, but we had 10 shots with 3 on target, which was the same as City, but we had 22 touches in their box and they had 18 in ours. Yeah. So that's the game at the Etihad last year. And I would say it's another debate for another day, but XG isn't something I really prescribe to. I don't ever talk about it in my own stuff, in my own club. What I do talk about is shots on target and touches in the opposition box. So if your ratio of touches to shots, you've got loads and loads of touches but hardly any shots, you can probably predict there's been less space and less shot and less opportunity to shoot or wasteful shooting. Whereas if you've got a high shots with low touches, it means you've been really efficient when you've got into the opponent's box. So that's something that I kind of talk about and prescribe to. I think if we get 22 touches in their box on Sunday, we win the game. I think it's that simple, because this is why they signed the players that they signed. Yeah. So that when you get into these areas and these types of games, you score. And it's easy to say that, given that we've got the best XG right now in the Premier League. We've got the most touches in the box in the Premier League. So statistically, this team are attacking better. But as the old heads will tell you, Wayne, the only stat that matters is how many times you put the ball in the net, and we're not doing that right now. So I would say everything in my analyst brain, and from my experience as an analyst, would be saying if we can get that number of touches in their box, allied with more shots on target, we'll score. And it'd be interesting to see in that chat about Donnarumma, if Donnarumma comes into that game and makes a big error, what the narrative round about that will be. Because I think they would absolutely nail a Manchester United goalkeeper. I'm not too sure they're quite as harsh on other goalkeepers.
No. Well, I think it's established, not facts, but truism in football that the goalkeeper of Manchester United is considered the most high-profile in world football. But on the point of midfield, so if you're saying you're going to play Casemiro and Ugarte, you basically say, if I remember rightly, wasn't it Ugarte who got injured early in the Etihad game last season, and Manu came on and he was fantastic for the rest of the game. So there's nothing really to draw there apart from Kobe's brilliant, which we know. This isn't Kobe praise podcast, but this is a point about the two mentions, the two players that you mentioned there. If you know United aren't going to keep the ball, what do you expect them to do? Because we'll talk about the attack in a moment, but United have traditionally benefited, as they did last season. The attack benefits at the Etihad from playing behind the defence. We don't really have an attack set up to do that. Maybe we do, and Bumo's good at doing that. But before, obviously it was Rashford and Garnacho and Ahmad and Martial in the past and Dan James in the past getting behind the defence. Now, with the midfield that we've got, they're not going to keep the ball. That front three needs to keep the ball, and they play in front of the defence. So what are you expecting, before we talk about the attack, what are you expecting to see from the midfield?
Bring back Tony Marshall. That's the only thing I've got to say about that. Kobe Manu come Mike shaking his head. Kobe Manu come on for Mason Mount in last year. In terms of the midfield, I think we're going to be three. I think it'll be a 3 and a 4. So it'll be whoever the back three is, and then it'll be the 4, being the 2 wing backs and the 2 centre mids. And I think it'll be narrow and it'll be compact and it'll be on the same side as the ball. And it will force City to go back and switch out the other side. And I think that's the reason why it will be those two. Not because that's what I would want. I would want Manu to play, because I think Manu's the best next option outside the Casemiro to play in that kind of double, particularly in a game like this, because he can cover the ground side to side. And he can probably do a wee bit of the donkey work for Casemiro that perhaps he won't be able to do. And I think that 3 and 4 would give us a really solid base for a front three of Bruno, Šeško and Mbeumo to break on City. City will come, they'll put their line on our halfway line and they'll try and camp us in our half, and it's going to leave loads and loads of space behind them. And I would expect Euro, I would expect Shaw, Maguire, whoever it is, De Ligt plays in that 3, to do an awful lot of turning out onto their stronger foot and playing balls down the channel. I think we'll see a lot of that on Sunday. And it's how I'd be setting up, because City's weakness is how high their line is. They're going to have a new goalkeeper. Perhaps he hasn't formed relationships with that back 4. Perhaps he doesn't know the language as well. you just never know. So I would want to test him really early, and I think that front three would allow you to do that. There is even perhaps some wisdom in Mainu plays in the Bruno role in that front three because he can do the running.
Yeah.
I just don't think we'll see it. I think, as I said to you in a couple of pods ago, the manager's telling you that he doesn't rate Mainu because he's not playing him. He's not putting him in. And that's how you can always you speak to any footballer. The manager can tell you he rates you. But if he rates you, he puts you in.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Mike,
Yeah.
Tony was quite right there. Mount was the one who came off for Mainu, but I think what I remember from that game, Fernandez had started in central midfield and Mainu coming on necessitated Bruno moving forward. Yeah. Ironically enough, I would think because of the injuries elsewhere, Bruno will probably start further on, like Tony's saying. Mount, I don't think is available, so it'll be a case of Agate, Casemiro, or Mainu. So likely Casemiro and Agate being in there. City are going to do what City do in midfield. They're going to try and keep all of the ball, keep it moving. It's going to be a lot of time without it for United. And I always think then the key thing for any player in those kind of big games is composure on the ball. And, Casemiro's got it, but he's still got more composure of breaking play up and moving it on in a sophisticated kind of way. Agote's got that in a messy kind of way. This is, again, not to arc on about the great days under Ollie, but this is what we were so good at doing under Ollie is moving the ball quickly and in the bigger games at least. But yeah, I don't know what to expect from I think Tony's right. The midfield is going to be what it's going to be. It's going to be Casemiro and Agate. They're not going to keep hold of the ball. But maybe they'll surprise us. What are you expecting to see?
I think there are several decisions that Amorim's got to make. You just mentioned there. If Mount's fit, I think he'll play somewhere. He's shown this season that he's one of Amorim's favourites, and it's the work that he does off the ball as well as the work he does on the ball. I think is very important. And in a game like this, I think his legs and his ability to get around would be really, really missed if he doesn't play. But if Mount doesn't play, because obviously he came off the last game, I would expect Bruno to play in a 10 and maybe Ahmad to not play as a wing back, maybe play further forward and see Mbeumo on the left. That might be an option. But then Dalot didn't play in midweek for Portugal, did he? Got injured. So again, we've got a problem on that side. So who's going to play on that side? Does he bring Dorgu back, who hasn't had a great start to the season? Is he disciplined enough? I think there are a lot of questions with how United will set up. And looking at that, I think the only certainty is that Ugarte and Casemiro are going to play in that double pivot. I think they're the two that are going to play. I'd be interested to see whether he plays De Ligt or Maguire in a game like this. I know, Tony, you like Maguire in that as that central centre half, but De Ligt has had a good start to the season, and I think that De Ligt may be a better, longer pass of the ball. Maguire's obviously legs are not as able to get him into positions as De Ligt, but I think there are just so many things that once that team sheet comes out, we'll be able to dissect it very, very quickly. We'll know why he's done something, but there's just so many what ifs at the moment because we just don't know who's available and what the manager's saying. I mean, we started with the goalkeeper, but there's any number of positions that we're not sure what's going to happen.
No, that's fair. Tony, got anything to jump in on there?
I don't. If it's getting Gary Neville's comments about Mason Mount being like Nicky Barnby, which I keep bringing up in the group chat. At least we've got a Nicky Barnby in our team. I think you're right that Mason Mount will probably play if he's fit. I don't think he should, but he will. And it's just interesting with Dalot. You would hope that it would be Ahmad if he's fit, if he's available, that would play in that right wing back area. Although Tony Mowbray is raging that Ahmad is playing in there because he doesn't get to have touches in the opposition's box as much, and he has to track into his own box. So I take it for that, but that Tony Mowbray hasn't been watching our games. But I thought that was an interesting comment. But I think we'll know more when the manager does his press conference, hopefully, because he'll tell us who who's come back from internationals, and you kind of always get this with internationals, don't you? You don't know who's coming back fit, who's maybe travelled to the other side of the world, who's come back not feeling it. So we'll see, but I don't think I've been particularly impressed by any lineup as it's came out before any game. So we live in hope that the game at the weekend will be different, and I will be like, wow, that's pretty forward thinking, pretty attacking, and I'm looking forward to this. But it hasn't happened yet.
Interesting. It just made me think there. The fact that Casemiro and Agate have travelled so far, maybe there's a resurrection for Manu in there. I don't know. No. This is all about Manu. It's whoever wins, whoever deserves to play, and how we win the game that matters. Whether or not Manu plays is secondary. Still an important thing for Wayne, but not the be all and end all of United winning is. So let's talk about the attack then. What I stand by what I said earlier in terms of United's success over the years in these kind of games, and they've had plenty of it over the last 10 years. It's not like the one-off wins. They've had plenty of wins against City. They've had plenty of wins in other big games, and generally it's been through economic play, which really isn't a feature of Manchester United as a rule. You would say United waste a lot of chances. They're profligate. They part of the ride with United is they take you all the way to the end and everything like that. But in these bigger games, whenever they've had victories, they have been economic. They have been smart with the chance taking. They've missed a few chances as well. I remember a game against City where we could have scored 6 in the first half at City as well, and we ended up scoring, I think it was 3. And we were really good in that game. I think it's a game where Rashford missed a penalty as well. There was a game where we scored plenty of chances. That was under Ollie anyway. But the point remains that we were playing over the top. We were playing with a lot of pace in the team. Now, obviously, this time round, Amorim has brought. Rob's made the comment here. It doesn't matter who's picked Amorim. He's still playing that system. And part of the system is having players to play in front of the defence. He's brought in players specifically to do that. Now, with Cunha, you don't have a problem because he's so good on the ball. Fernandes not a natural dribbler. Mbeumo, he's pretty good at playing in front of the defence, no problem. Ahmad could do that if he's in one of the forward positions, and obviously scored the winner there last season. But it is a different kind of way of playing. Like you said, Tony, last season, we were lucky because we got it, we won late on in dramatic fashion the way that we've done before. We did deserve to win. I don't have any gripes about that. But the nature in which we delivered the win, like I said, more touches in the box, almost as much of the ball as City. They were uncharacteristically sluggish. I don't think we'll get that this time around, so maybe that'll play a part into it. But United's way of playing played a part in the way that they got the result last season. So with that in mind, now he's signed 3 players, even though it's probably only likely to be 2 of them who are starting, or maybe even only 1 starting on Sunday. We're saying that we've not got a midfield who can keep hold of the ball. You're saying you still expect to see space exploited behind the defence. I know we've got the pace in some of the players to do that. But we've signed these players in to be better at playing in front of the defence. So, is it just a case of not only having one option now? That all right, we're probably going to use the same option that we used before in trying to exploit the space behind, but they can at least have the added bonus of playing in front of them, which Rashford and Garnacho couldn't really do.
Well, I went and found the stats that I was talking about earlier. Man United Premier League games only, first in shots, first in touches in the opposition's box, first in accurate crosses, second in shots on target, second in expected goals, second in accurate long balls, 5th in possession percentage, but 9th in the table. So these are obviously positive signs, but you need positive outcomes. So I would say that the games that we've played, Arsenal, everybody's spoken about it. We're not going to rehash old ground. We've done reasonably well to create chances against Arsenal, not taking them. Fulham, we could have been out of sight in the first 15, 20 minutes. Burnley, I don't know how we let Burnley back into that game. You can argue another goalkeeping error and we get out of jail. But ultimately, the signings they've made, the system they're playing is to try and have more control, as we've spoken about. In our very first pod, domination of the ball, controlling central areas, attacking players in attacking zones. However, it is Manchester City away on Sunday. And I think what we're kind of talking about, exploiting the space behind, having quick players in the front line, take your chances when they come, stay in the game, get to 70 minutes and still be in the game with a chance to win it, is probably what we're going to see on Sunday. And when I have to say, I'm all right with that. I am all right with that, because even the very, very best Manchester United teams at times have had to come back with backs against the wall and win in unlikely ways in unlikely places. Sunday or the game against Man City is definitely a game that I don't think many people will expect us to win. And I'm not going to hang my hat on saying that I think we're going to win. But we've been competitive under this manager, and I think we'll be competitive again on Sunday.
It's funny, Mike, because I mean, a big feature of the home games last season in particular, we're playing with it looked like a 5-man defence sometimes, particularly because they would be playing Mazraoui and Dalot sometimes at the wing backs. So it'd be like, all right, this is how we're playing. It's 5 at the back. I think it was Newcastle at home, and it looked like that, and it was horrific to watch. In the away games, for sure, you can say that Amorim has at least been proactive. I was talking earlier, I was heralding the results that we've had in the past, but they've been reactive performances we've set up in a way that's, like I said, economic. It's been there to counter-attack, not to impose ourselves. Even in those games where he didn't have the players that he wanted last season, I think we always set up to impose our style of play on the defense, on the team we were playing against, no matter who it was away from home. Not so much at home. I think there was an expectancy that we should do that because we're playing at home. I think maybe Amorim wrongly assumed that that's what you would expect from a team playing at home. But away from home, I definitely see the difference in, like, this is a team that's gone out to attack to win the game, even if it's set up as people are saying with a 5-man defence. I still think that that's a team set out to, if the wing backs are defensive, I still think they set that team out to win the game, and they've usually played better than the opponent. I think we deserve to win the games that we didn't win at Anfield and at the Emirates in the Cup. And we definitely deserve to win at the Etihad last season. So I don't have any doubt that he's going to set the team up to be attacking, to try and win the game, like Tony said. And that's probably, win or lose, no matter how it goes down, that's the strange crumb of comfort to take from this. Even, I really don't know if it's a strong crumb of comfort in the overall direction, but it is that in the big games, he's going to try and win. And it's going to be our approach that he's going to try and impose on the game rather than just react to what they're doing.
I think it's a good point about wanting to win. I think the recruitment of any manager at Manchester United would be absolutely against our legacy, the myth, the history of not having a manager going out to win. And I think Amorim is a manager that wants to go out and win every game. I think the point I want to make is that we've got to be quite pragmatic and with a longer term view with regards to a game that's happening this weekend. Is that I think for this season, the progress needs to be judged on the games that are not against City, Liverpool and Arsenal, because those are almost one-off cup final derby type games. And we just about beat Burnley, but it should have been out of sight at half time. Same with Fulham, but we only got 3 points when it should have been 6. So it's the games I'm looking at outside of those top 3 teams, and Chelsea as well. How are we going to impose ourselves? Are we going to score that first goal followed by the second, put the game to bed with the third? Those are the games I think this season we need to be judging Amorim on him, the players he's bought, and the tactics that he wants to use. And that will say a lot. By the time we get to November, December, I think that will say a lot about what Amorim's about, what his team's about, and how the season's going to be judged up to that point and overall. So while obviously we want to beat City and we want to win in these games, we will always be competitive in these games. We've got good players, and it sort of suits our game of these big teams coming at us. But yeah, my view is more longer term.
Yeah. Very quick one before we close. I had my little go at Guardiola earlier. I wanted to get you guys' feedback because I might be the only one clipped up. I want to put you both at the mercy of the clippings. What have you seen, Tony? I'll start with you. What have you seen in Guardiola, particularly, let's say, post Haaland? Once he signed Haaland, and that so 22, the last 3 years. Considering everyone heralded him as like, he's never going to change. He's always going to stick to his plan. He's always going to, this is the way that he's going to play. He's a true connoisseur. I mean, I will say this about Arsene Wenger, even though it went to pot at the end. He did stick to what he believed in. He never deviated from that. He went down on a sinking ship and he went down all the way. He never changed. He never deviated. Yeah, all right, they got a bit nasty sometimes, but it was always that kind of lightweight kind of way that he wanted to play. Guardiola has definitely changed. Some people would say that's a good thing. It's evolution, but I still think that it's like Emperor's New Clothes. That you've seen him change and gone flat track bully, but yeah, he still gets credit for the pretty football. Am I being too snarky, Tony?
No, I don't think you are. I've never really bought into the Guardiola hype because in my mind, he is a follow-on from Cruyff, who's a follow-on from Rinus Michels, who's a follow-on from that old Ajax style of total football, and nothing really, in my mind, that Guardiola has done has been absolutely innovative and never been done before. He has adapted old concepts and made them new and completely dominated English football. And who am I to say that he was wrong to do that? But I've never really bought into it. I find it quite sanitised, quite diluted version of the game. I do think he has diverged. There's been divergence in the types of players he's signing. If you think of the Aguero, David Silva, De Bruyne, like showstoppers, creative footballers, even like when he was signing Mahrez. Obviously, I'm Scottish and live up here, and we went through decades of the old firm just signing the best players from the season before and going on to win the league with them. And there was a bit of that with the Mahrez signing. The Haaland signing, I still think he probably suits being a Manchester United player more than he does being a Manchester City player, in my opinion, and I've always thought that. But he isn't. He plays for them. But I think you're probably right, Wayne. He's signing to win trophies because that's what it's became about. And to me, it doesn't matter how many trophies Guardiola wins, because I'll still view he's an evolution of guys who came before him.
Yeah.
He's always had big backing in the transfer market, and he's always, pretty much every league he's ever been in, he's had the best players in the league. So, brilliant coach, generational coach, greatest of all time. Not for me.
Yeah, I think Cruyff and Michels will look at that and go, that this isn't the football that we envisioned. I don't think they'd see that. I remember talking to Fabio and Rafael when I was doing their book, and Fabio was talking about tiki-taka, the Spanish one. He was saying it's essentially a negative tactic, and I liked that. I've used it ever since. Obviously, in the book that I wrote, I talked about that. It's an interesting one. Mike, where do you sit on the debate? I mean, you can't. The other thing you can't deny is that he's influenced British football. I mean, every coach tries to play that way. It's just when you look at how poorly equipped other teams are to play it because they don't have the best players. So that's why it doesn't look as good. And how poor it is as a spectacle, you then say, well, just because he's influenced it doesn't mean that it's for the better. Was it Valdano who said, he called Mourinho and Benitez football poo on a stick. And they were influencing British football at the same time, and they had a massive influence over we'll call it half a generation, which, you know, United's exciting team with Rooney and Ronaldo kind of aligned back into the right order. Liverpool threatened to do that, align football right into the back order under Guardiola and Klopp, but Guardiola just proved that enough money does win and can bully any style out. I mean, I'm far from a Liverpool fan. I don't want to praise them, but they were the next. That was cyclical. That's what was going to happen. Liverpool's style of football was going to take over. Much, much better to watch than City's. As horrible as that is to admit. But yeah, Mike, can't deny that probably at your level, you're seeing it, right? You're seeing teams trying to play the Guardiola way, and it's just not, it just doesn't work. It shouldn't work, really.
No, loads of good points. I sometimes sit back and I think about this, and I think, is it coaches and teams just being lazy? Just saying, right, oh, he's successful, he's doing it that way, let's try it. And you're right, I see it at grassroots level. You've got players who barely can kick the ball 10, 15 yards and trying to play in this, you know, if we're going to call it tiki-taka, this short football from the back, and they barely get past 20 yards and they've conceded a corner or whatever. And it's just, I think sometimes it's lazy. I mean, I grew up on stories of the Magical Magyars, 1954, the Hungarian team. And my dad, even when I was a little nipper, made me watch the Real Madrid Eintracht Frankfurt football. Those were innovative games. Those were exciting games where you got genuine world-class footballers, Puskás, Di Stefano, Hento, getting the ball, getting forward, being exciting, having shots, scoring goals. I think Valdano was right. And I think he probably is right about some of Mourinho's work. Guardiola's work recently. I think, you know, that the moniker would fit there. But what with Guardiola, I think there may have been a change when I look at it when he signed Grealish. Grealish was, again, I thought Grealish would have been a great United player. Lots of flair on the wing, and he sort of coached it out of him. Yeah. And he would have been perfect for Haaland, getting down that wing, beating your man, knocking the ball in. And all he made Grealish do was get down that wing, come back inside, come backwards. That's not Haaland's game, but it's almost like he wanted to impose his will on that. And yeah, I just think that, you know, it's sort of a before and after at that point. And I think Rodri as well this season, yes, he's come back, but he looks quite leggy. Obviously, he's come off a bad injury, but he looks a bit leggy. And hopefully on Sunday, we can exploit that.
Yeah. Hopefully he's not been to see Dr. Fuentes before. He was the one who got them up to speed, didn't he, in the past? Yeah, I think you're fair to say. I think you're probably right. There, you know, some of the good players that have been there. Everyone talks about how much he improved players, but I remember they used to say that about Sterling. They said, "Oh, look at how much he's improved Sterling," but Sterling went there as one of the best players in the league, and he just sort of stagnated a little bit. I didn't see anything, but you know, there was a result of, you know, if a player can get to the byline and cut a ball back, as every good player did in the City system, it's just about whether or not they've got the attributes to do that. It doesn't make them a good player, and it just makes it an effective system once the player's good enough. You compress a defence in, and you can work around it. You know, that's what the great players do. If you had, you know, I'm not one who would just naturally, like Tony was saying earlier, prescribe to the theory that he's got to go and manage Stevenage Borough to prove himself as a manager. I don't mean that, but I would want him to go to Stevenage Borough and be able to get those players looking like a Guardiola team, rather than, as I suspect they would be, like every other coach in the country. It looks like a crap Guardiola team, and it's not good to watch. And I expect that that's what he would be at. It'll look like another team with the same kind of resources. And I will say to his credit, even though I do think it's false modesty, he talks soft like this, talk of him being the greatest and everything like that. I do think there's an ego there, and no problem with that. Every great manager has it. But I just think this talk of, you know, I'm not denying that he's influenced a generation of British football. I just don't think it's for the better, and I don't think it's really an influence in the most holistic way. I don't think it's an influence that's gone there. I think other coaches have seen it as that, and they've gone, "Oh, we'll try and adapt it because this is a successful way." But really, if you strip it back and you look at the fact that City have bankrolled their success, and that's really what is at the heart of everything that they've won. Yeah, I think that's where I am with that. Anyway, that's it for this week, guys. We've said enough about the City game. We'll be back next week to review that. Hopefully, some of our good predictions about United the way that United are gonna play will come right. Because we've all been fairly positive this week. Hopefully, we've got something good to chirp about next week. If you've enjoyed the show, if you can like, subscribe, leave a comment, really appreciate it. Subscribe on the audio platforms and leave a review if you're listening back on Apple or Spotify or the audio platform of your choice. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week.